Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 1 of Transforming Trauma. And we're going to start at the beginning. And the beginning is with what trauma, or indeed any kind of significant stress, does to us, does to our bodies, does to our minds, does to our spirit. I want to talk a little bit about what happens and how it alters and can damage virtually every function in our entire brain and the rest of our body as well. And then we're going to move into the antidote to those destructive, disruptive, chaos, and cringe-inducing forces. And we're going to begin with a slow, deep, soft belly breathing meditation, which is a very simple, direct way to bring us back into balance. So first of all, what happens? Trauma, remember, is a Greek word, and it means injury. Injury to the body, mind, or spirit. And trauma can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be social, it can be spiritual. Trauma can come from many, many different directions, and it is something that's going to come to all of us sooner or later, and a number of times perhaps during our lives. Now, the reaction to the threat that trauma represents is built into our biology. It's there in the biology of all vertebrates, from the fish on up in the evolutionary chain. And what I want to do is give you a sense of what those reactions are, and then of how we, as humans, can use our intelligence, use our imagination to counteract the effects of stress and trauma, how to come into a state of balance which allows us to move forward in a richer, fuller, more complex, more interesting, more fulfilled way with our lives. So the two basic reactions to trauma are fight or flight and freeze. Now, everyone has experienced, and just about everyone is aware of the fight or flight response. I was working with a group of 10-year-old girls in Haiti months after the horribly destructive earthquake there. I was doing a little class with them, and I asked them, and they described every one of the signs and symptoms of trauma with the exception of dilated pupils. So they described what happened to you after the earthquake. What was fight or flight like for you? And they would say, well, I was anxious. I was worried all the time. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. I was getting more irritable with my little brother or my little sister. I wasn't able to listen to my mom. I couldn't sit still. And others were saying, I just felt exhausted. I was so tired. I didn't want to be around anyone. I was so unhappy, and I was so worried there'd be another earthquake. So the first part of that response that they described was fight or flight. And it's there in every animal with a backbone. So when an animal is threatened by another animal, by a predator, or sometimes when animals are in high places, and it looks like sometimes when some animals have to deal with a snake, they have this physiological reaction. And what happens is their heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, big muscles in the body, the ones that are necessary for fighting or fleeing, running away from a predator, get big with blood and get tense and ready to move. Digestion decreases. That's what happens to all animals up and down the evolutionary chain. And also for those animals a little bit higher, the mammals, the center of the brain, called the amygdala, is a part of the emotional brain. Amygdala is a Greek word, means almond. This is an almond-shaped part of the emotional brain that's responsible for fear and anger, fires off wildly. And in animals like humans, where there's a big cerebral cortex. The frontal part of that cortex gets shut down somewhat when we're facing a predator. Or, for that matter with humans, the predator doesn't have to be an animal that's seeking to gobble us up. For us, the predator can be an angry boss, a spouse who's fed up with us. It can be concern, as it has been during the pandemic, concern about what's happening in the outside world, or worry about the future, or distress about the political situation, or concern about what's going to happen when I go back to work. All of those can produce fight or flight. Now, fight or flight is an adaptive, life-saving response. It's absolutely necessary. It was first described by the Harvard physiologist Walter Bradford Cannon in 1926, and he observed it in animals, as I said, up and down the evolutionary chain. Fight or flight is meant to be turned on quickly when the predator is there and turned off just as quickly. So if you happen to have seen film of animals on the Serengeti Plain in Africa, let's say gazelles are at a watering hole and a lion approaches, the gazelles go into fight or flight and boom, they're off and running. They are genetically programmed to run from the lion. The lion's a predator. They can't fight a lion. If there were two lions, they might square off and fight over the territory. The genetic programming would say, okay, now's the time to fight. But the gazelle, on its way. If the lion catches the gazelle, who is in full fight or flight with the big muscles of running and the heart rate up and the blood pressure up and stress hormones coming out, if the lion catches the gazelle, the story's over. But if the gazelle gets away, and you may have seen this in films about Africa or about the Serengeti Plain, 2-3 minutes later, the gazelle is happily grazing. Fight or flight has come, done its life-saving job of making it possible for the gazelle to escape the lion, and it has gone. As far as we can tell from the gazelle happily grazing or drinking water, she's not thinking about the lion anymore. And even if it's two lions, they're in a fight. The fight comes, fight's over. One lion who's defeated may shake himself, disappear. Fight or flight has come, done its job, it's gone. The other response that comes when we're facing a predator, facing an overwhelming stress, when we're traumatized, is the freeze response. Now, roughly speaking, what we've begun to understand, and this is research that my friend Stephen Porges has done on polyvagal theory, is that when animals are threatened, and humans too, the first response is to look for help. When that doesn't come, and it wasn't coming for the gazelle, then the animal goes into fight or flight. That's the second response. If that response can't work, if the threat is overwhelming and inescapable, then we, and many animals as well, go into what's called the freeze response. That is a kind of shutdown. The body kind of collapses on itself. We put out endorphins, which relieve pain. And if we're human beings, we take a kind of psychological distance that protects us from the threat that's coming to us. Now, if you have a pet cat, you may have seen the freeze response in the mousies. The pet cat catches. I used to live on a farm, and I had several pet cats, and a couple of them were terrific mousers, and they would like to bring home the mouse in their jaw. They would catch the mouse, they'd bring the mouse home, show the mouse to me and my partner there on the farm where we were living, very proudly, it seemed to me. Now, sometimes they bit down very hard on the mouse, and the mouse was dead, But sometimes you could see the mouse lying kind of limp in the cat's mouth. And often enough, the cat would get bored with the limp mouse. It's no fun to torture a mouse that's not fighting back. And would put the mouse down. Then Mousie would shake herself off, run off to her mouse hole. The freeze response had come, had protected the mouse, saved her life from that torturing cat, and had gone. And all she had to do was shake herself off. It was gone, and she could resume her normal mousy behavior. The problem for we humans is not fight or flight or freeze. Those are necessary for us as well. If we're confronted by an opponent, if we're dealing with a situation that provokes anxiety, if we're in a war and we're overwhelmed, fight or flight's necessary in those earlier conditions. When we're completely overwhelmed, the freeze response is necessary. I've worked with a lot of people who've been tortured in other countries or raped, and they describe going into that freeze response and as if they left their bodies and didn't feel the pain, and that preserved them. They were able to survive because of the freeze response. The problem is not fight or flight or freeze. The problem is when those responses continue and persist over days, weeks, and months, when they're no longer necessary, when the cat or the lion or the attacker on the street has gone away, or when the trauma or stress is ongoing, as it has been during the pandemic, as it is for people who live with spouses who are abusive, or in work situations with a boss who's a tyrant, it continues. That's the nature of what happens when these adaptive responses continue and become long-term rather than the short-term, quickly turned on and off response that they were designed to be. Now, the outcome from prolonged fight or flight or prolonged freeze is very, very significant. These set the stage for every imaginable kind of chronic condition that we humans have. So you see this in children who've been abused and neglected when they were young. When they grow up, these ACEs, these adverse childhood experiences, take their toll. Kids who've experienced that are more likely to be anxious and depressed later on. They're more likely to be angry and irritable as adults. They're more likely to come down with all the chronic illnesses that might follow prolonged fight or flight or prolonged freeze. So for example, if prolonged fight or flight, blood pressure's up, stress hormones go up, cholesterol goes up. So you're a setup for heart disease. Also, if freeze persists, people who are shut down, immobilized, self-protective, those people tend to be quite susceptible to depression. And both groups, in order to relieve the symptoms, may drink or take drugs to relieve the symptoms of prolonged fight or flight or prolonged freezing. And this is what we see. This is what we saw during the pandemic, increased consumption of alcohol. I've seen it in war zones. We see it in communities where people are using opioids all the time because unemployment is high and frustration is high. Now, there is a non-drug, non-alcohol, non-pharmacological way to rebalance nervous systems that have been thrown off by fight or flight or freeze response. And today, we're going to work with one of those antidotes. All of the antidotes that I'm going to describe in these first few classes relate to the practice of meditation. And when I say meditation, I don't mean anything fancy or esoteric and nothing you need to pay a lot of money for or put on different clothes for or go to the Himalayas or a monastery for. Meditation is simply relaxed moment-to-moment awareness. And there are thousands of meditation techniques. None's better, none's worse than any other. All can be useful. In In the course of these 10 classes, we'll experiment with a number of different techniques of meditation. These thousands of techniques can be grouped into 3 basic kinds. There's concentrative meditation, focusing on a sound, an image, a mantra, it's a Sanskrit word for sound, repetitive prayers, but there are also concentrative meditations like Our Father, or Shema Yisrael, or Illallahu Illallah, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Those are all concentrative meditations. As far as we know, they're about 8,000 years old, maybe older. Concentrative meditations are part of every religious and spiritual tradition that I know of. Second kind of meditation is mindfulness meditation, becoming aware of thoughts, feelings, sensations as they arise. So far as we know, this originates with Siddhartha Gautama, the man we call the Buddha, who 2,500 years ago saw the way to ending suffering was by becoming aware of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations through what we call now mindfulness. Simply being aware of what's happening would help us to move through and beyond the suffering, the trauma that inevitably comes to human beings. And now mindfulness, of course, has been incorporated in many different religious and spiritual traditions, as well as used by people who are purely secular, no religious tradition at all. The third kind of meditation, and I'm smiling because this is one that I love and one that is less well known, but is crucially important, particularly to help us deal with the freeze response, though also very helpful for fight or flight. The third kind is expressive meditation. Fast, deep breathing, jumping up and down, shouting, chanting, dancing, shaking, whirling, laughing. These are the oldest kinds of meditations on the planet. And every indigenous group that I know of, all the indigenous people I've spoken with around the world, use expressive meditations. And so do I, and so do we at the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. They're crucially important to help free us from the constriction, the shutdown, the freezing that trauma can cause, to help us free our bodies and open our minds and come into a more relaxed state, to help us empty our cup. Today, we're going to experiment with concentrative meditation. And I call it an experiment because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to give you some guidance and you're going to experience what you experience. But every experience that any of us has is worthwhile. It's the one we're meant to have in this moment. So this is going to take me, 10 minutes or so to teach you this meditation and to do it with you. And as I teach it to you, I'm going to teach you the physiology of it as well. And I'm going to show you how it is an antidote to the signs and symptoms, to the disruption and disturbance of the fight or flight response. I'm going to ask you to do this with me and just do it. See what happens. No, don't be too serious about it. Just allow yourself to, as I said in the introduction, empty your cup. Just be here for this experience. Now, you don't have to do anything to prepare yourself for this meditation. Just come as you are. Have a nice, comfortable place to sit. And that's really all you need to do. And good to have a place that's relatively quiet so you're not too disturbed by whatever's going on around you. If you're in a busy household with a bunch of other people, you may want to close the door and you may want to put a little sign on saying, little quiet time. I'm taking a little quiet time. Now we're going to do the soft belly breathing. And I learned this technique about, in 1974, 75 from Stephen Levine, who was a wonderful meditation teacher. And at first I thought, this is a little silly. because I was used to much more stringent and demanding kinds of meditation. But the more I did it, the more I appreciated the simplicity and the elegance and the sort of fundamental nature of this practice. And all it is really is breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth with our bellies soft and relaxed. And relaxing into that experience and letting the thoughts that come, letting those thoughts come, noticing them, letting them go, and coming back to soft belly breathing. So now we'll begin together. This will take about 10, 11 minutes. So make yourself comfortable and just sit. I'm sitting here in a chair that's pretty comfortable for me. It's good to be in a comfortable position. Some of you may like to sit cross-legged. For me, it's much easier if I just sit in a chair with my feet on the floor. So now I'm going to begin to take you through it. Just allow your breathing to deepen. And now, if it feels comfortable, let your eyes close. You may notice that I have my eyes closed. Now let your eyes closed. And if you're closing your eyes, you won't be able to see me. However, what you're doing is you're also eliminating a tremendous amount of external stimulation. We pick up so much with our eyes, and it makes it a little easier to focus on the breath as it comes in through the nose and goes out through the mouth. This is a concentrative meditation. So we're going to be focusing on our breath coming in through our nose and leaving through our mouth. Breathing slowly as we do this, allowing our bellies to be soft and relaxed, and relaxing a little more with each exhalation, and repeating to ourselves, soft as we breathe in, and belly as we breathe out. So we're concentrating, we're focusing on the breath coming in through the nose and out through the mouth. On our bellies being soft and relaxed. And on the word soft as we breathe in and belly as we breathe out. Relaxing a little more with each exhalation. This way of breathing may be a little unfamiliar to some of you. It's a very relaxing way to breathe. If it's a little challenging at first, after a while you'll meet the challenge. It'll become easy. Breathing like this slowly and deeply in through the nose and out through the mouth with our bellies soft and relaxed. More air goes to the bottom of our lungs where there's better oxygen exchange. And oxygen, as you likely know, feeds all the cells in our bodies. So when we're breathing slowly and deeply like this, in through the nose and out through the mouth, more air is going into the bottom of our lungs, more oxygen into our bloodstream, and the oxygen is feeding, nourishing every cell in our bodies. Breathing slowly and deeply like this in through the nose and out through the mouth with our bellies soft and relaxed. We're slowing our heart rate, lowering blood pressure, relaxing the big muscles in our bodies and improving, enhancing our digestion. Breathing slowly and deeply like this, in through the nose and out through the mouth with our belly soft and relaxed, is the antidote to the fight or flight response. Lowering the high blood pressure, slowing the fast pulse rate, relaxing the tensed big muscles, improving digestion that is shut down when we're in a state of fear. And breathing slowly and deeply like this quiets activity in the amygdala, A-M-Y-G-D-A-L-A, a part of our brain, a part of our emotional brain responsible for fear and anger. And the vagus nerve, which is calming our body and quieting our amygdala, is also enhancing activity in the frontal part of our cerebral cortex, in areas responsible for thoughtful decision-making, self-awareness, and compassion for ourselves and others. And this vagus nerve, which is mobilized by the slow, deep, soft belly breathing, runs up from our belly, through our chest, back to the central nervous system, to the brain, where it exercises these effects on the amygdala and on the frontal cortex. And one branch of the vagus nerve connects with other nerves, other cranial nerves that are responsible for facial expression and speech. So when the vagus nerve makes its way up through our bodies and sends impulses to our brain, it quiets our body, decreases activity in the amygdala, decreases fear and anger, enhances our capacity to see the world clearly, to be self-aware, to be compassionate to ourselves and others, and makes it easier for us to tune in to other people's speech and facial expression, to bond with them. All thanks to this nerve. Vagus. Vagus means wandering. Thanks to this nerve that wanders up through our body, back to our central nervous system, and creates this relaxation response, creates this antidote to fight or flight. As we continue to breathe slowly and deeply, we can notice all the muscles in our bodies relaxing. And become aware of this now. Feel the muscles relaxing in your belly and your pelvis and your buttocks as you exhale. Feel the relaxation in your legs and feet. Feel the muscles all up and down your back, relaxing as you exhale, all the way from the base of your spine to the base of your skull. All those muscles, feel them relax. Enjoy this relaxation. Now feel the muscles relax in your chest and shoulders as you exhale. In your arms and hands. Now feel the muscles relax in your neck and face and head. Feel those muscles relax as you exhale. Feel your whole body relaxing with each exhalation. To deepen this process of relaxation, this balancing in your body and mind and spirit, remember to focus on the breath coming in through your nose and out through your mouth, on your belly softening and relaxing, and on the word soft as you breathe in and belly as you breathe out. If thoughts come, let them come and let them go. Gently bring your mind back to soft belly. Couple more deep, soft belly breaths. Now slowly, gently open your eyes. Let your attention come back in the room. Welcome back. Now, if we were together, I would say to you and look for a response, how many of you noticed a change from before you began soft belly breathing 10 or 12 minutes ago to how you're feeling now? And what I would see, what I have seen over the last 30 years of doing this with thousands and thousands of people, is about 80% of people, at least, notice a change, even in a war zone. And in some settings, 95% of people. And I say, well, what kind of change? And as I'm saying this, notice for yourself, what kind of change? So for me, I'm seeing more clearly. I'm seeing this camera much more clearly. It's like I'm looking directly into the eye of the camera. And I'm feeling my back at once straighter, but also more relaxed. And I'm enjoying the smile on my face. So those are some of the changes that I noticed. Notice what may have changed in you. What's at least as important as any specific change, and the specific changes are important. I'm feeling happier. I know from experience that if I took it now, my pulse is going to be a little slower, my blood pressure a little lower, my muscles are less tense. That's great. What I also find out each time I do soft belly breathing, and what I hope you're finding out as well, is that you have the capacity to make a change in how you're feeling. This is vitally important. One of the great difficulties we have when we've experienced a trauma or we've been living through a period of stress is we feel we can't do anything. One of the hallmarks of depression are helplessness and hopelessness. And people with chronic illness often feel helpless and hopeless. People who've been through a traumatic situation, a very difficult divorce or separation, or a loss of a family member, or difficulties at work, or economic worries that are ongoing, or fear for our lives, that we have a sense that we can't do anything, or that there's very little we can do. This experience of soft belly breathing teaches us, not because I'm talking about it, but because all of us, you included, are experiencing a change. And that change is telling your brain, telling your mind, you can make a difference. And the way our minds work, if we discover and we experience one change, that tells us other change is possible. We're not only not helpless, but we're not hopeless. There's hope that other change can happen. That's why we're beginning this course with soft belly breathing. And that's why I encourage you to make soft belly breathing your friend throughout this course and way beyond the time that you're taking it. Soft belly breathing's been my very good friend for the last 45 years. And increasingly, as I've been dealing with trauma, other people's as well as my own, it's been absolutely vital to keep me centered, keep me in place, help me deal with being in a war or after a war, or deal with tragic situations that other people have experienced, or indeed the tragedies that have come into my own life. Now, how often and when to do soft belly breathing? We did it for 10 or 12 minutes. If that feels comfortable to you, fantastic. People often start 3 or 4 minutes, 2, 3, 4 times a day. Nobody really knows exactly what the ideal dose, if you will, of soft belly breathing is. The original studies, and there have been thousands of studies now published on the effects of meditation on our mind and body. The original studies were done on Tibetan monks or Westerners who'd been meditating for 20, 30 years. And the studies were usually on people who meditated for hours a day. Then the studies were on people who meditated perhaps 40 minutes a day, 20 minutes twice a day. But more recently, very important research has been done on people who meditate as little as 15 or 20 minutes a day, and also with people who even meditate a little bit less. What they are showing is that people who meditate for as little as 20 minutes a day have the capacity not only to feel calmer, to be more relaxed, to feel like their muscles are relaxing and to detect their heart rate going down, but to reverse the damage that has been done by prolonged fight or flight. So what the research shows is decrease in activity in the amygdala and that center of fear and anger in the emotional brain, and increase in activity in the frontal cortex, in those areas responsible for thoughtful decision-making and self-awareness and compassion, and easier connections with other people. That's what the research is showing, along with the feeling of being calmer and more in control. And not only changes in the function of our brain, but research that's been done in the last 20 years, including particularly research that's been done at Harvard, at University of California, San Francisco, is showing changes in brain structure. The size of that fear and anger center, the amygdala, is shrinking in people who meditate for as little as 20 minutes a day. And the frontal cortex is growing larger. Now, 20, 25 years ago, if I had said that to an audience of anybody who'd studied science, they would have said immediately, impossible. The brain of an adult cannot grow new tissue, cannot grow new cells unless it's a tumor. But now we're knowing it's untrue. The brain can grow new cells. And the scientists have had to empty their cup and take a look at this possibility. So what I want you to know, and what I want to conclude this session with, is telling you that this soft belly breathing is extraordinarily powerful medicine. People, when they're anxious or depressed, they may go to drugs, to pharmacotherapy that will increase serotonin and help be relaxing, maybe increase endorphins, decrease stress hormones. Soft belly breathing does that job and demonstrates major changes in brain functioning as well as brain structure. This is extraordinarily powerful medicine that any one of you who is watching can use to bring your brain, bring your mind, bring your whole being into balance. And if soft belly breathing is difficult, if you can't sit still even for 5 minutes, and believe me, when I started meditating 50 years ago, I couldn't sit still for 5 minutes. It was max for me. Do something physically active first. Let loose a little bit of the tension. Then come to sit quietly. And it still may take a few times. You may have to walk around the block or run around the block or jump up and down, and then sit quietly and breathe slowly and deeply. And virtually everyone, after a little while, will find this technique useful. And the other thing I'd suggest is that you use soft belly breathing whenever you're feeling tense or anxious, or before you're having a meeting at the Center for Mind-Body Medicine, the beginning of every meeting of staff or our faculty when we're leading a program. We always do a few minutes of soft belly breathing. And from now on, when we begin a class, I'm going to do a minute or two of soft belly breathing with you to remind us all of how valuable it can be and to relax us and to bring us into the moment-to-moment awareness, which makes it easiest for us to empty our cups. So thanks so much for being with you, and I'll see you at our next lesson.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this Commune Masterclass, then I think you'll love this video right here.
When an animal has been in fight or flight, it will also, after that crisis is over, it will shake itself off. So the shaking is a way